Well, welcome everybody to Rockstars Garage. For those of you who are confused and you don't know where you're at, it's the Kofi Baker Drum Clinic. This is the great Kofi Baker right here. Thank you for coming. Let's give Kofi a warm welcome. There we go.
Thank you very much. We haven't done any sound checking of the drums yet, so I hope they sound good. Sound like drums to me. Okay, so I'm just going to do some drum solos for you, and then I'll take questions, and then we can go from there. And I'll show you the first thing my dad ever taught me on the drums when it came to drum solos. So I'm playing a solo with my dad. All you people probably know who my dad are, right? Yeah, who's my dad? Some arsehole called Ginger Baker. Anyway, so I'm going to do some solos for you, and then we'll just go from there. Anyway, that was my warm-up. Just going to get a little bit of water after that. So how many drummers are here? Okay, so any questions from the drummer people about anything I did before I move on?
Do you ever have to use rented equipment, or do you always bring your own shit when you go wherever you go?
Depends how far. Yeah, I try to. I have a drum kit in California and a drum kit in Europe, the same setup. So that helps me traveling. But I did Australia last summer, and I had to. It was 12 planes in 2 weeks. So I had a different kit at every show. And that's a pain in the ass because you have to figure out how to set it up. And I don't have a standard kit, obviously. I have small kick drum and a big kick drum and 13-inch snare. So, yeah, I mean, this kit is my favorite kit because you never have to tune it. You see all these wires on it and everything?
Yeah, that's insane. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's like... So just by pulling the wires, you can make the tuning. So it's always in tune. It can't be out of tune. It's just pitch. You just take the pitch. So it's my favorite kit because it's the least maintenance I have to do. On normal drum kit, I have to tighten it all the time after one solo like that because I play very, if you can see from my sticks, I play very on the rim of the drum. So instead of playing it there, I'm playing it because it gives it a different tone. That's why anybody here familiar with my dad? He had his drums really flat, but also he had them on his 20, so he had them a bit, and he sits up, so he's very up. So he plays on his drums very flat, but the idea is so that you hit the rim and the drum at the same time, getting that sound. So that was what I do. I had my drums tilted because I learned to play when I was like 4. So my drums had to be up here, and I was playing like that. So slowly as I grew up, they slowly flattened, but I'm playing on a bigger kick drum, a 22 instead of a 20 on the right. So my drums have to be a bit more slanted because they're a bit higher.
Why 2 different kick drums?
Because I couldn't find the matching one. No. Because one's smaller, so it fits in a car easier. It's really just because they're different sounds. If you're going to have 2 toms, you don't have 2 12-inch toms. I think Keith Moon did once, but anyway. But it's different sound. So when you're playing polyrhythms, if you're playing just double bass drums, you're not really going to notice it. But if you're playing a polyrhythm, like playing one rhythm with one and another with the other, which is 3 against 4, you've got the different sounds. So it's much better to have the different sounds than having one. If you're playing just double bass drums, it's not really going to notice. So different sounds, really, that's the reason I have it. That was your answer.
Awesome. What kind of pedals are you using there?
How many what?
What kind of pedals are you
Oh,
using?
pedals. I'm using Peace Nitro Drive. And I only use them because I like the word peace. They're pretty standard run-of-the-mill pedals. They're not anything special. They're just a standard pedal. So they're sturdy. They last a long time. My hi-hat's Peace as well. So they're sturdy stuff.
Now you do have like a Zildjian endorsement? Are you endorsed by? I mean, if you would figure a legendary figure like you would have
A legendary figure like me.
have an endorsement deal.
I endorse Aquarium. I endorse Zildjian. And the drum company, of course, Hudson Custom Drums. Very, very small company, though. They, hand make everything. And Ford snare drums, so I endorse them. And Peace, I endorse the Peace hardware. So yeah, I have endorsements. Pretty much everything here is endorsed. Yeah, apart from this stand, I think, is the only one that.
You're working on that stand, though.
Yeah, the cowbell too. I don't have a cowbell endorsement. Which, you would think I should have one of those. Oh, even the microphones. Samson microphones. See? Even microphone company endorses me. Samson microphones. So that's a great. Yes, I have endorsements. This is really handy. The only thing is that when you're really poor and you have no money and you're a budding musician, no one gives you shit. And then as soon as you start becoming slightly successful and getting gigs that pay you money, here, have everything for free. It's like, I suppose that's okay, but now I get it for free. But when I was younger, it was terrible. I actually had a gold bracelet that my dad gave to me with my name prescribed on it in 24 karat gold. And I pawned it for a symbol. So, there you go. That's what you do when you have no money and you need a symbol. I mean, that's the most important. This bracelet's not going to do anything. It doesn't sound very good. I don't know. I'd have to look. It might still be somewhere around. I mean, I have the same set of hi-hats that I got when I was 10. They're not here in my studio, but I use them all the time. So, these are all newer cymbals, but yeah. Same set of hi-hats, and I still have my first ever ride cymbal, too, in England. So, yeah, my dad's ride cymbal that he used in the Cream, that's on all those Cream shots, all the Cream things, the ride cymbal that he's playing, he actually left at my house when he left. And it had a crack in it, so he didn't use it, so he just retired it. And I put a dressing gown over it and used it as a practice cymbal when I was growing up. And then when my mum died, I was over here, and they had to sell the house, and I don't know what happened, but the cymbal got thrown in the trash. And it's like, I would have just given that to like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or something, do something with it, but for it to just go in the trash, it's like, well, there you go. These things happen. It's like the Blind Faith tapes. Me and my sister found the Blind Faith tapes in the loft, in the attic of our house. And we didn't know, we were like 7, 8 years old or whatever. And we found the reel-to-reel machine and the microphone, and we're like, yeah, let's just tape some stuff. And we taped over all these tapes. Yeah, years later, my mum was like, we're broke, we got no money, the heat's been turned off. And she's like, I know, I can sell those Blind Faith tapes in the loft. And me and my sister were like, what tapes?
Right, so we need a moment of silence for those tapes.
I mean, there's probably still bits of it left in between the stupidity that we taped, whatever it was. I don't even know, but, that's what happens when your parents are stoned out their heads and they let the kids do whatever they want. We had no guidance. We were just like, whatever. Okay, any more drum-related questions?
Yes, I was curious, sir. I couldn't see your feet when you were playing.
I can't either.
What technique did you use to play your left bass drum and your hi-hat like almost the whole time? Do you flatten out and just play both pedals? Or how?
Yeah,
or
I just
connected?
play in the middle of the pedals. So I'm on the edge of the hi-hat and on the edge of the bass drum. Yeah, so.
And there was a time where you doubled the hi-hat on the kick, or vice versa.
Yeah, sometimes.
How do you do that?
Well, your left foot should be bouncing eighth notes when you're playing upbeat or downbeat.
Okay.
Bouncing eighth notes. So it depends where I go to the pedal to where I can use the eighth note.
So you're using it kind of longboardish, like back on the hinge farther?
Yeah, it just really depends to whatever sound I feel like I want to make. I'll just back off my left foot or I'll bring it forward. It changes
cool,
the sound.
I never seen it so much. That was cool.
Well, it's just kind of, yeah, I mean, it really, and sometimes the sound will change without me realizing it, and I'll be like, oops, I didn't mean to do that. So it's kind of a fluid thing. It's all smoke and mirrors, really. I'm actually not even really here.
Neither are we.
Yeah, there you go. It's all a hologram, right, in the other side of a black hole or something. Anyway, so I do that because that was my dad kind of invented that thing. But back then, the hi-hat and the kick drum weren't anywhere near as close as they are now. So he had to actually really get his foot sideways to catch both pedals. So I don't have to do anywhere near that.
Like a stick shift on a hill?
Yeah.
Stick shift car?
The stick shift on a hill, right, there you go.
Yeah, on a hill.
Any more drum-related questions? No? Okay. Well, it's so bright in here, I'm wearing shades. That's why I'm wearing the shades.
Your future's so bright.
Yeah, that's right. I'll play some more stuff then. One of my favorite things is Latin. So I like to do a Latin thing as well with my with my solos. So the Latin thing, I involve the cowbell, and it's all based on a 2-3 clave and 3-2 claves. If you're a musician, you probably know what that is. If you don't, you probably don't want me to explain it anyway, so I won't. I'll just play. So this is a Latin thing I'm going to do for you. This was a Latin thing with some extra stuff in it. I think I need to tighten this mic up. It keeps wanting to go up there. Any questions about any of that?
Out of curiosity, do you always do match grip or do you ever do standard grip?
Okay. Standard grip. You mean traditional grip? Right. Well, I asked my dad that because my dad played traditional grip when I was growing up, saying, you know, well, you've only taught me like this. So what about this stuff? What about this? So he promptly smacked me a few times. You know, normal. And then he would tell me, do I want to go back in time and march in World War I? And I was like, I'm just asking a question here. What about this? Anyway, I got the lecture about the reason this came about is because of the drum on the side and your elbow sticks out. So you have to find another way to hold a stick to be able to play that drum comfortably like this. So he said, but when you're playing on an acoustic kit, it's actually not efficient because of, you know, that's a lot easier movement than having to do all this. Hence, like Dave Weckl has got mass shoulder problems from playing like this. And so no, I don't. But, you know, I mean, it just goes to show that really holding your stick doesn't really matter. If you can change this to this and still play as well both ways, it just shows that holding your stick is really not that important. I mean, just as long as you can practice the rudiments and your hands will develop a way of doing it or they'll fall off. Yeah, I mean, so I was never really, I mean, my dad did teach me how to basically hold a stick and tell me that I was working from these two fingers. So he did give me that, and so he did. But as terms of like people say, you know, some people hold their palms up like this, you know, play differently. And you know, one guy said, your hands are weird. You play French grip on your left hand and German grip with your right hand. I don't know. Doesn't feel any different when I'm doing other stuff.
Who's your influences besides your father? I mean, I like to look up to Buddy Rich and John Bonham, of course. What kind of guys do you look up to when you were coming up?
Well, when I was growing up, I was really into Bozio, Terry Bozio, or Bazio, however you say it.
Yeah.
And then I got into, obviously, Vinny from there, Zappa. I was listening to Zappa. My first real music, apart from ABBA and the stuff I grew up as a kid, the first time I actually started going, okay, I want to listen to like musicians was Zappa. So all of Zappa's drummers were really my, you know, Ainsley Dunbar, you know, Chad Wackerman, all of the guys that really played with Zappa. But definitely Terry was the first guy where I thought, you know, maybe I should practice my rudiments. You know, maybe I should sit here and practice a little bit because that sounds insane. I want to be able to play like that. Because I'd always just played, you know, pretty, beats. I always had my left foot going though. My dad always taught me to play either on the downbeat with the left foot, you're playing a beat, or the upbeat for the jazz. Which I kind of like the jazz because it kind of gives a beat a swing. So, I mean, Bozio and all of those guys can play jazz. You know, they're all great, you know, players. Bozio's a lot more on the beat. I suppose Vinny's, they're more on the beat. But yeah, my dad was kind of more of an upbeat person. So my influences were probably more opposite with my dad. Because I know when my dad came and saw me play a gig when I was like 14 or something, or 15, and he was shouting, left foot on the upbeat. I'm like, it's just a rock gig, you know? I'm playing with a rock band. And it's like, you know, you're playing these rock beats. You go like that. And my dad's going, no! I mean, you can't really play a rock, like heavy rock going, you know, you can't really do it. But my dad was all about that. He was all about playing that jazz, you know, again. So he was really about keeping the right, yeah, so I was just about to explain that. The right hand and the left foot is your constant. That's always doing that. Your snare drum and your bass drum move around. So that's always keeping the same. So when you play jazz, it's got that swing to it, which is really cool with like the shuffles as well. Shuffles and jazz are pretty much the same thing. Shuffle is just playing, all of the triplets. Jazz is playing half of them. So there's your jazz and then your shuffle. So it's really much the same thing, jazz and shuffles. African music as well. That's the triplet feel. So that's all in that same genre. So my dad was very big on the swing because he came from jazz. So my main influence, I would say, was jazz. When I was growing up, was the first thing that my dad ever taught me in terms of grooving was that, playing jazz. Obviously, my dad would always play things really slow because he was really old. I used to go, oh yeah, yeah. He'd go, no! Smack me a few times like this. I go, yeah.
Are you involved in any kind of project where you're writing music and performing with like original new stuff that you're working on?
Yes.
Awesome.
Lots and lots of stuff. I did some recording with Spiderbone.
Yeah!
So, yeah. So there's how many tracks? 4 so far?
4 so far.
4 Spiderbone tracks. Should be playing all over the place on that stuff. Yeah, I'm all over the shop on that one. I don't think I put any 5s over or anything. Because you see, you got with drumming, with all music, you got polyrhythms. If you've ever listened to the Beatles or something like that, you listen to like most of the Beatles tunes have some form of a polyrhythm in it. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is a 3 against 2 because you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 1, 2. But you've got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, and you're 1, 2, 1, 2. So that's Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is based over that. A lot of those things. I think even She's So Heavy is a 2 against 3, or sometimes I use 3 against 4s. But polyrhythms are really cool. So the standard ones that everybody uses is a 2 against 3, which is a really simple one. Most of you here can do that, just going like that. So those are 2 against 3. You could do a lot with that because it's really just playing that. It's used a lot in shuffles when you're playing a blues song. You're playing that shuffle. You're playing that. So it's used a lot, the 2 against 3. And then you get into the more complex ones, like the African ones, the 3 against 4, where it's like this. And this is a cool one as well. Which is one of my favorites, the 3 against 4, because it's really African based and you can do a lot with it. But then you get into the really weird ones that are only used when you want to cause mass confusion in a song, or you just want something that sounds like, what the hell is this drummer taking? So those are your 5s and your 7s, and your 9s are kind of, yeah, they're kind of weird, but 9s are 3/3, so they can be less weird. But your 5s are definitely weird. If you're playing I do it all the time if I really want to screw with people. If you're playing, a 4/4 groove or something. So things like that, where you're playing 5 and 4 in the same bar, and people are like, what is going on? So, yeah, try dancing to a groove being like. I mean, you probably can if you take one at a time, but the 2 together is going to give you a weird 5 against 4 phrasing. But it's fun to be able to get into those things for any instrument player, for anybody, if you're playing guitar, bass, drums, flute, or whatever. Rhythm and phrasing is your most important thing. I mean, you only have to know a few notes, but if you phrase them all over the place and wrong, they're going to sound crap. If you phrase them nicely, they're going to sound good. So phrasing is the most important thing. So everybody should learn to play drums.
Yes. Yes. Play guitar. Do you ever count in your head, or you just play by feel?
I play by feel. it depends on what I'm playing. If I'm reading music, I have to count in my head. So unless I really know the piece, but yeah, if I'm reading music, I make sure I have to at least count my bars, or your quarter note. With learning to read, it's kind of like first you learn to count it in 16th notes, then you learn to count it in 8th notes, and then you get better. You just look at the quarter note, and then when you're really good, you look at the bars, and then when you're really good, you don't even look at the piece of paper at all. But it's just everything kind of counting is very important when you read it, and counting is very important when you're being able to play something. You want to be able to count through everything you play. You want to be able to play a solo and count. Keep a count going. So the practice I used to do when I was a kid was do that. I used to, just play completely off the grid, playing weird stuff, and keep a count going with my mouth or in my mind, so I could keep a count, or using a click track and the same thing counting. It's like your 5th time. So it is good to do. Yeah, I mean, I don't do it much anymore, but I did it when I was, just to make sure if you're playing stuff with double bass drums, you don't have a count anymore, unless you're keeping a count, with your right hand. You go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And you can keep a count going while you're just going nuts. Then it will help you be able to go nuts and still have a time. Yeah, that's a good practice to do. I used to do that. Does that answer that question?
Yeah. So how about practicing? Was there a method? Did you have some system? Were you doing rudiments? Were you just?
Yeah, I mean, practicing, you always want to, it's like, whenever you're practicing, so say you're practicing a paradiddle. Say you're just practicing going, paradiddle. Then you'd practice the paradiddle with your feet going like, a straight time. And then if I want to keep practicing that paradiddle, so I need to really keep practicing, I will change my foot pattern so I'm making something more complex underneath it. So instead of just playing a paradiddle, or maybe not something quite so complex, maybe just going. Maybe just patterns like that. So I'm practicing my paradiddle, but I'm practicing something against the paradiddle. So that's with any exercise I practice. So, if I'm practicing, say, 4-stroke roughs, I might practice triplets underneath it. So I'll be practicing triplets with the kick drum while I'm practicing 4-stroke roughs or something. So any rudiment I'd practice, I would combine a foot pattern in with it. And that's pretty much my method with everything. That way, you're never really bored because you're practicing that exercise for a long time. So you might as well put something, and something that you can do, Don't do something that you really can't do. Something that you can do, and then once you get good at that, you can maybe advance it a little bit at a time. The key is steps. The key is not to go, okay, I'm just going to go learn how to go nuts immediately. The key is do it in steps, like little bit by little, learn a bit at a time, a bit more, push yourself a bit more, get your independence, maybe take one hand doing one pattern. The jazz is really good for that because the jazz is not just a straight pattern, because it's that like that. So when you learn to play, other stuff around it. So you've got to keep that rhythm going. So just learning that jazz pattern becomes really handy because jazz is like going like that. 3 beats. So it gives you a different hand pattern to learn everything off. So I have a book, by the way. I do. Yeah, it's on Amazon. It's called The Forgotten Foot. And that kind of it goes through the teaching methods of how I learned to develop my independence and how I did everything. And it takes you step by step. Because there's a lot of stuff in there that people don't know about. Like paradiddles, there's 4 of them. I mean, most people only know 1. And there's everything, every time you place something in a different spot, it completely changes its whole feel. So everything you learn that's in 4 has 4 different ways to play it. Everything you learn that's in 3 has 3 different ways to play it. And every triplet exercise can be played in straight time, and every straight time exercise can be played in triplet time. So every rudiment you learn, you've got like 20 or 30 different ways of playing the thing. You know, it's all over the place. So just to give you an example, a paradiddle. Everybody knows a paradiddle, just going paradiddle. Right? Which is on the beat. What if I took that paradiddle and moved it 1/16th note over? Or slide it on a double? Or the last one? So that's taking one exercise and playing it just in... Yeah! So, yeah, that one's playing... More cowbell. Anyway, so we took the paradiddle and we played it 4 different ways. Now you could take that same paradiddle and play it as a triplet exercise. So instead of playing it in 16th notes, play it. So that's playing it in triplets. So you're playing the same exercise and taking a completely different feel. So this is all just taking one rudiment. So you do that with all your rudiments and you have so much deeper stuff to play. Flam accents, which is one of my favorite. If you're playing in triplets and you play on the beat, you play it. So you can move it around all over the place. You've got 3 places to move it. And if you move it each time, you get a polyrhythm. If you go... So that's just one exercise again, and moving it on different places. You can also play it as a 16th note instead of playing it. So you can do a lot with just rudiments. That's all just playing one rudiment, using it different ways. So that's something I do a lot. You know, is take something and just move it around, which is basically, you know, musical phrasing again. And then you can take your exercises and split them between kick drums and snare drums and all same exercises, like double stroke rolls, you know, you play it like that and you play it all different ways. You can play it straight time. So you've got fast triplets, 16th those. Slow triplets. So that's just double stroke rolls, splitting it between the kick and the snare. So yeah, it's all smoke and mirrors. It's all just simple shit. Just moving around how you want it.
Yeah, I seen a thing on Netflix about your dad.
Yeah.
You remember doing that?
I do, yeah.
And after the guy, at the very end, he went after.
Well, he watched the movie like about 3 years ago. He finally got to watch it. And my sister was there with him, and he couldn't hear anything because he can't hear, so it was all fine. But like about 6 months later or something, a newspaper reviewed the movie and said something about how mean he was to me, right? And that was it. My dad's like, "What have you said about me? I'll kill you. You're no longer my son," which he's done like 15, 20 times, so it's not like any shocker. It's like, wow, okay, you've disowned me again, wow. So, yeah, so that's still going on like that at the moment. Still, because he can't hear, and I don't think I think it's his wife that's now on the computer, so who knows what's going on now.
Yeah, I'd seen a thing on Eric Clapton. I think the other guy was a drummer from Cream. And Eric Clapton is scared to death of your old man. You could see, they were at his old crib.
Yeah.
He was still real cautious about what he said about your dad.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, that's why I just completely just blow him off all the time. Say bad things about him now. Screw him. I'm bigger than he is.
Sorry. When you were growing up, did you have any other celebrities that came around? Your father maybe friends with Keith Moon or?
Well, I mean, you've got to realize I was born in '69, so I kind of missed it, really. I mean, I was really, really young. I I mean, I got lost in Eric's garden when I was like 5. But you could probably get lost in a bloody, paddling pool at 5. So I don't know how. It seemed like it was huge, the garden, but I was 5. So, yeah, I mean, my older sister, she was more around all those people.
How much older was she?
8.5 years older than me. So she was like 8 when it was all going on, and I was like 0 to 1, I mean, but though I found out that I was born 9 months after the farewell concert. So that means I was at the farewell concert. And I was on the drum stool. Someone just got that one. That's probably John. Anyway, any more questions about this drum stuff?
Now he knows me. How much time do you spend practicing?
As much as I can, really. This is the first time I got to practice today, so I'm happy. But yeah, as much as I can. I mean, I'm sure when I go home, tonight I'll probably sit down and eat some food and then go to my studio and start playing. I have to practice a lot because I have so much stuff that I've learned that I forget it. So I have to keep practicing and going back to stuff that I was doing 10, 15 years ago and bringing it back again. Because I forget, my drumming has kind of evolved over the years. There's some stuff that I've kept the same, but some stuff I've added, some stuff I've dropped. And there's a lot of things that I don't do anymore that I used to do, which I think are cool, and then I have to relearn how to do them. So that's the only problem with learning so much about an instrument is it's hard to retain it all. So you forget it. So you have to keep practicing a lot, I think, if you want to keep keep improving. And also, it's good for your mind. I mean, the way the brain works is every time you learn something new, you build a new synapse, you build a new pathway. And when you practice it, you use that pathway a lot and the wires get harder, so it kind of hardwires. And that's why you practice something enough, it becomes really easy to do because the pathway's really sturdy. Now, if you don't learn new stuff and you keep doing the same thing over and over again, your brain hardwires and it doesn't build new synapses, and that's the onset of Alzheimer's or Alzheimer's disease. So learning something new is really good for anything. So for me, for drumming, it's really good to always be in that spot where you're uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. It's like cleaning your teeth with your left hand if you're right-handed. Try cleaning your teeth with your left hand. It's really uncomfortable to do. But if you get used to it, you're building stuff in your brain. So you're actually working your brain. So it's actually good to always do that kind of stuff the older you get. Because I'm getting really old now, so I'm going to forget who I am very soon. That wasn't really a drum-related question, or was it? Yes. That's why I practice a lot. That's what I'm explaining, yeah. Because it helps the mind. It's relaxing for me too, practicing. But I always practice what I can't do. I never practice what I can do. I only practice the stuff I can do when I'm playing solos or having fun. So I always tell that to my students. They're like, if you're getting on the drums and just jamming for an hour and having fun, that's great, but you need to take 30 minutes of that or 40 minutes of that just to something new that you need to learn. That way you're always going to keep improving, and that way it's always going to be, it's a journey. It's not the destination, it's the journey. So always keep learning is the best thing to do. So that's what I say.
In your learning process, you go to other teachers?
I have done in my past, but now I have so much knowledge of how everything goes that my knowledge is more than my ability. So I'm having to spend a lot of time catching up with stuff like I wish I could do that. Okay, I need to get that and stuff like that. So when I get to the point where I've at least accomplished everything that I want to get done, then I might start going, okay, who else can teach me something new? Because there's always something new to learn. But and I've learned a lot of new stuff over the years. I'm always learning from other drummers all the time. I learn riffs all the time. So it's constantly learning, yeah. So I teach myself by watching others as well, not by actually taking a lesson from them, because I can pretty much work out what they're doing when I see someone do something. So I go, okay, yeah, I'll try that.
Other than yourself, who is your favorite drummer of today?
Who's my favorite drummer? I have a lot of favourite drummers. That's the problem. I mean, if I was to pick one, that would be really hard. I mean, probably Terry Bozzio was my biggest influence. But Vinny then took over that. So Vinny, then it was Vinny and Bozzio, and then Gene Krupa. I mean, when I discovered Gene Krupa, I was like, man, that's my favorite drummer. So every time I discover these new guys, and it's like apples and oranges. So I don't really have a favorite. You know, I mean, Gene Krupa, I think, is one of the earliest drummers around that I think had the most amazing feel, and was just an amazing player. And I thought he was better than Buddy Rich myself. I mean, Buddy Rich was a bit more flash, but I thought Gene Krupa had more style. So again, you see, it's apples and oranges. You know, it's like it's trying to figure out who you think's your favorite drummer. So I don't know. I just can give you those references. Anybody that played with Zappa is probably my favorite drummer, because all that Zappa stuff was just mind blowing to me. Still is. So.
Think about the pedals nowadays, the way they, you could, double not only what you're doing, but you could actually have more. The pedals nowadays, like for double bass and stuff like that. You're
Well,
actually striking like 4 pads as opposed to 2. When we had single,
right.
pedal years ago.
Well, again, it's really not about speed, is it? That's the thing. I suppose, that heavy speed metal and all that kind of stuff was all about speed, but my dad always used to try and tell me to play slower and be more slow and thoughtful about my playing, so I never really got into the speed thing. Obviously, I learned to play things faster because I wanted to push my hands, but again, I try to play things less speedy as much as I can and be more, just more, melodic with my playing rather than speed. So with those pedals, I don't really, I have, standard pedals. I just have 2 standard pedals, and, I think you can get enough speed out of that, really, without having to add, extra fliddly-flabblies everywhere. I mean, I think if I added any more to my playing now, it would be ridiculous anyway. It's like a lot of things I've learned are slower, sound better than when you're fast. Like, when I first learned to play 4-stroke roughs and was learning things to do with them, I would learn riffs, and I saw John Bonham and all these people, and I was sure they were playing these riffs and going like this. So I thought that was how they were playing it. You've got the 4-stroke rough. But it turns out they weren't. They were going like this. So it's a different exercise. And it's less in the 4-stroke rough, so it sounds more powerful. So again, so that's where something with more fills in it doesn't sound as powerful. It's like a 4-stroke rough, but played with 2 kick drums. This is a 4-stroke rough played with 1 kick drum. So it just takes it into different stuff. So the simpler stuff is sometimes the better, And again, that's the stuff I've learned through the years. I've learned how to play stuff by watching and sound, and sometimes you can't always, get exactly how it is, but I'd make something up which I thought sounded like it, which is kind of cool, because when I learned what it actually was, I was like, well, I got 2 things now. Don't just have the one, I got 2 out of it. So, anything else?
When you record, do you listen to a click?
Yes, because nowadays, if you don't play to a click, it's a mess editing and everything. And I like the fact when I'm playing to a click that I can, I can take bars out wherever I feel like it, or I can go, I've played this cool in this verse, but this verse wasn't as cool, so let me just take that verse and put it there. That way it sounds cool both times. And it's matching, because I play differently every time. So sometimes if I'm doing a session where they really want, to sound the same, I have to play my beat this time and then loop it and cut and paste it, because otherwise it's going to sound different. Each verse is going to sound different. So if you don't play to a click, you can't do any of that. You kind of, I mean, if I'm jamming in a room and I'm recording it, then I probably won't have a click going, because you can edit without a click. You have to match the kick drum up, but it's not as easy. But when you're playing songs, always a click. Jams, you don't have to have a click because you want to be more free, and you can still edit jams. You can edit, you just can't, it's just not as easy to make a song without playing to a click. So yeah, and also my dad said, playing with a click, he plays with a click probably 50% of the time and 50% not. That's how he practiced. He probably had one of those old TikTok metronomes, which I had when I was a real young kid. But it's like when you're playing in a band, you're the drummer, so you're really the conductor of the band. But you have to listen to the other players. So if playing to a click, it's like learning to listen to someone. It's like learning to lock in with something else. And if you're playing with a guitar player that maybe pushes it a little bit, it's good to push with it a little bit and then bring it back. It's okay to speed up and slow down a bit in a song if the whole band's in it sounds tighter. Because you don't want to be like playing like keeping the time and the guitar player's a little bit ahead or this, it's going to sound like shit. So you're going to have to speed up a little bit sometimes with a guitar player or a bass player just to make it sound better. Because it's like I played with one guy years and years ago, and he went out of time in a song, and I was like, what happened to your timing? You went off time. He goes, I was playing in time. I was going, yeah, but you've got to play in time with me. I mean, we've got to play in time together. If I play in time and you play in time, we just take a tip of time and play. It's going to sound like shit, I can tell you. So that's playing with a click is like that. Playing a click is like learning to play with a musician and really lock in. So when you're playing in a band situation, you can listen to them and adjust with them. Because a band is like a team. You should be all, if someone makes a mistake, you should, not make fun of them, but, try and cover it for them. Or, make a worse mistake so that you get the attention. No, that's not a good idea. Yeah, so I like playing with a click. I play with a click probably 95% of the time when I'm practicing. But, I just like playing with a click because it's, I'm in the studio anyway. I have my own studio at home. So when I'm on my kit, I'll practice, but then I always have work to do. So I'm always like putting my headphones back on and running a system. Nowadays, it's so amazing that you can do that in your own house, When I was growing up, you had to take your whole kit to a studio, mic it up, sit there going down, 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 down for an hour. Nowadays, you just go into your basement, put your computer on, and you can email it to anybody in the world. It's incredible.
Is your drum kit at home the exact same configuration you have right there?
Yes. It's not the same kit, but it's the same. I have a 8-inch roto tom instead of a tom, and I have a 10 by 10, so I have a longer tom, and I have pretty much different drums. I have a 16 by 6, I have Yamaha. I have a mix of drums. I have my favorite drums that I've kind of collected over the years into one kit that I use in my studio. But it's the same cymbal setup, same hi-hat, same kick drums are 20 and a 22. But yeah, all my setup in England is the same setup, just different. It's a Ludwig set. And my set in California is Pacific, a PDP kit, but it's the same setup. Because otherwise, if I close my eyes and I'll miss something. It's hard enough keeping track of this as it is. If I've changed something, which happens to me sometimes when I play a pickup gig where I'm playing just a 5-piece. When I got my eyes closed, I'll be hitting things that aren't there and stuff. So, so it happens when you play the same thing over and over again. Okay, any more questions? I need some more water.
What do you want? Water?
Ran out of water, yeah.
Who was your dad's influence?
That's all in that documentary. I can't remember. I think it's like Baby Dodds and weird people like that. What kind of name is that? And like Phil Seaman. I mean, come on. Really? Phil Seaman.
Perfect, thanks.
I mean, that's his name. I mean, imagine what he got in school. I can imagine. But anyway, yeah, so those are the people that taught my dad, I think, was that guy, Phil Seaman, which I was when I was a kid. And Phil Seaman, I thought it was great. But,
What's your favorite style to play?
I don't really care as long as it's fun and good. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a favorite style. As long as I'm having fun and playing, it's great. I mean, I play differently every time anyway, so everything changes with me. It's hard for me to play the same thing over and over again. just because the way I am, I'm about improvisation. That's why I like the Cream music, because it's improvised. A lot of it is improvised. And they change stuff as well anyway. I just learned to play. I've been playing Sunshine my whole life a certain way, and I just watched a YouTube video of them playing it some completely different way. I'm like, wow, okay, well, I didn't know that. So that's kind of where I'm at. And probably my parents took so much drugs when I was born that I can't think think normally anyway.
Are you like right in the middle of a tour now, or are you just, is this like a friend thing you're doing for?
I'm right in the middle of a clinic at the moment.
Sounds personal.
Yeah. Well, I could do one more solo combining everything, just going through stuff.